To address Avotius' concern that God might be blamed for the presence of moral evil in the world, Augustine says us backtrack on some issues that we have perhaps taken for granted. He has us examine a trifecta of questions. 1. Has God's existence been made known? 2. Do all good things come from God? And 3. Is free will a good thing? To answer these three questions, and Avotius' ultimate question regarding whether or not God can be blamed for sin, since he gave us a free will, Augustine interrogates Avotius further. He asks him, do you exist, are you alive, and do you understand? He answers the affirmative to all three, but also concludes that only living humans can do so. A corpse may exist, but it is not alive and certainly doesn't understand. A chipmunk may be alive and exist, however, it does not understand. Since something that understands must also exist and be alive, Avotius without hesitation concludes that understanding must be superior. In the next few pages, Augustine will attempt to clarify what the understanding is by distinguishing it from an inner sense that processes sensation. Augustine goes through the different senses and their proper objects. For instance, sight apprehends material objects. Augustine also notes that some objects can be discerned by two senses. For instance, shape can be apprehended by both sight and touch. Augustine uses this phenomenon to speculate that senses in themselves cannot determine what belongs to one sense and what may belong to two senses. He postulates that there must be an inner sense. Augustine does not think that this inner sense is reason or the understanding, since animals have it. The inner sense presides over all the senses and tells animals what to avoid and what to pursue. Humans have this inner sense as well, but because we have reason, we can understand that we have this inner sense. Animals do not understand that they have this inner sense, for they lack reason. As a consequence of all this, Augustine argues that no knowledge can be had unless reason is paid attention to a matter. So animals with an inner sense and without reason don't really know that they are perceiving or what they're perceiving. This may be moving all too fast. Let me slow down here. Augustine recalibrates. When we perceive color, our perceptive sense does not sense that it is perceiving. That is what is left to this inner sense. I think this, if you don't object, makes sense. A couple weeks ago, I had an ophthalmic migraine. I didn't know it at the time. I was playing basketball and an implacable teardrop with a prismatic edge presented itself to my field of vision. I then began perceiving via my inner sense that something was wrong with my perceptive faculty. Luckily, it resolved, just too much reading and writing that week, and the blood vessels in my eyes constricted. What about Augustine's claim that animals have this inner sense? He reiterates that animals, if they just perceived, would not move. It is the presence of this inner sense that synthesizes what the basic senses give to it that allows for the animal to move towards or away from an object depending on the level of pleasure or fear the object presents. What about this claim that only reason gives humans knowledge of the things perceived, the faculties that perceive them in this inner sense? If we were bereft of reason, we would not be able to delimit all these powers and order them properly, which yields knowledge. The basic senses and the inner sense are agents of reason. They present information to it that must be discerned and tested. I think these are some pretty insightful distinctions that Augustine has made, though I'm sure things are not as neat and tidy as Augustine claims. Could we find an animal without this inner sense? I bet we could. Also, some animals seem to really know some things. My dog knows how to fetch a toy or a bone, and it knows when I'm about to go for a run and wants to come with. On Augustine's view, we would have to retool what I'm saying here. My dog, via its inner sense, fetches an object or desires to go for a run when I lace up, simply out of pleasure. It doesn't really know what it's doing since it lacks a reason. I'm not saying Augustine is wrong, but it is a bit strange to say my dog doesn't know these things. I'll have to think on it some more.